It's great to be here with you guys again. Had a great kickoff 2 weeks ago with the groups and just the chat that we had, and just happy to continue to be able to contribute and just be a part of this. So let me start off by kind of talking about when I was a kid. You know, we all have these sayings that our parents would tell us when we were growing up, and now that we're older, we laugh at them. And so for me, one of those things was whenever I was being snarky or being a smart aleck, which I was prone to do quite a bit when I was younger, my mom would always say, you need an attitude adjustment. And so I've kind of used that as the theme for what I'm going to chat about here for the first few minutes of this, is that our profession, our insights profession, needs an attitude adjustment. And it's not because we're being snarky or smart aleck or anything. It's because we're kind of stuck in old ways of doing things. We're kind of stuck in the dogma of our academic and clinical forefathers. And I think we've lost sight in many cases as an industry as to why we're actually in business. Why do we have jobs? What is our purpose? And so some of you may have seen on LinkedIn or throughout the last few months, put some of these thoughts in a book of mine called Insights on the Brink, that I wrote with my buddy Tim Hoskins. And in that we share our feelings about where the industry is at, some of the problems we have, and most importantly, how we can fix it. And so I've just pulled a couple of things from there that I'll just chat about. I don't use that term in the book, but just this attitude adjustment, kind of what we need. So the first thing that I think we need as an industry is we have to understand, we have to adjust our feeling of why we exist. You know, a lot of people think we exist to do research, that we are project managers, that we are able to, that our job is to deliver data and information. And it's funny that when I have spoken on college campuses, and when I'm now a marketing professor at UNC Charlotte, I'll ask students about, you know, what's the whole purpose of consumer insights? What do you think the whole purpose is? And, you know, I get a lot of textbook answers from college students. And what's interesting is that even when I ask professionals in our profession, what is our purpose? Very rarely do I hear what I think is the right answer, which is to sell more stuff. You know, that is the only reason why we exist, is because companies feel that by understanding the consumer, it will help them sell more stuff. And the problem is that we don't focus on sales, and we haven't historically. And as you will guess, I'm speaking very generally and collectively. There are organizations and groups and people that are very focused on that. But historically, the reason why our profession's in the situation we're in, with budget cutbacks and headcount cuts and the kind of situation we're in, is because we have not shown our value by focusing on sales. We think our job is to do research. We think our job is to manage projects and to deliver data. And that is not what our job should be, quite frankly. And so everything should be about how do we drive sales for either the companies we work for or the clients that we work with. So I think that's number one. And so that has to do a lot with focusing on outcomes, focusing on impact. You know, where is this all going to lead to? You know, when you're starting a project, we have to be real. We have to be real with ourselves and ask ourselves, is this project going to eventually lead to sales? And if the answer is no, then you don't do the project, or you reevaluate it and adjust it so it does. And granted, there are projects we do that will take 2 to 3 years before it realizes any kind of financial return, but we need to have the end goal in mind with anything we do. And I think sometimes we get too wrapped up in doing interesting research that we're not doing impactful research. And so I think that's the first attitude adjustment we need to have. Second one is closely related to that, is that we need to adjust the idea that methodology is the most important thing, because it's not. We focus way too much on methodology. We have conditioned our clients and our internal stakeholders to focus way too much on methodology, so much so that we have marketing people and R&D people dictating methodologies. You know, this happened especially when I was at Electrolux. I'd have coworkers come to me and say, we need to do some focus groups. And I'm like, no, you don't. They're like, hey, we need to do an A&U. And I'm like, no, you don't. They think that they can dictate methodology because that's the language we use. And that's the language we talk quite a bit. When you're talking about questions that need to be answered or problems that need to be solved, the methodology that we use to do that should be the very last thing we talk about. And I saw it a lot when I was on the corporate side for 16 or so years, and it's been interesting to be back on the agency side for the last 2 years, and to have some of the client conversations we have where the very first conversation they want to have is what the methodology is going to be. And I'm like, wait, we don't even know what the real problem is here. We don't even really know what we're doing here, or what success looks like, or what are the political ramifications of this research, and how is it going to be implemented, and all these other big questions to ask before we even figure out what's going on with methodology. So I think that it's talking in terms, again, of outcomes and impact, and how is this going to be activated, and how is this going to be used, and what does success look like, all those things before we start talking about is this qualitative or quantitative, is it a focus group, or is it a quant survey, or just whatever. That should be the last question, not the first. The third thing is that we need to develop more empathy, not more data. And so I walk a very fine line with what I'm about to say, because the DIY tools that have really exploded over the last 10 years have done a lot in order to put more information and data in the hands of companies. It has allowed budgets to be stretched further than they would have been otherwise. But just like anything, it's being overused. And DIY research when overused, and especially the quantitative stuff that's going on, does not develop any empathy. It just gives us more data. It just gives us more information. And there is no empathy in data. There is no emotion in data. And so we need to develop more empathy. One of the best quotes that I love is from the former CMO of Procter & Gamble, Jim Stengel, who said, if you want to know how a lion hunts, go to the jungle, don't go to the zoo. And so many times we're going to the zoo with the kind of research we do. We sit at our desks, sit at our computers, and think that we're doing research. And we're really not, because the power of what we do is in feeling empathy for our target consumer and making the whole company feel that empathy. Because if we do that, then from that comes stories, it comes emotion, it comes a feeling of, we don't just need to develop products, we need to develop solutions to help these people and to really help this target consumer with the conflict that they feel in their life. Because every consumer of every brand has conflict that they hope to overcome with the brand that they are using. And the key is, what is that conflict? What is it that we are trying to help our target consumer overcome? And the only way we can know that is by developing empathy and then telling that empathetic story within our organizations and helping people feel what we feel. Helping them feel what the consumer feels. I mean, very quick examples, when I was working in the dollar channel at PepsiCo, I was in charge of all of our marketing insights and analytics for the dollar channel, and spent some time with Dollar General shoppers. And these were in rural areas, what we call food deserts, where there aren't a lot of grocery stores. And to hear these people's stories about, this month we had to not pay our electric bill so we could buy food. We have to park our car after the second week of every month, give or take, because we run out of money for gas, and then we have to walk or bum rides from people. We are always 1 month behind on every single bill we have, because if we paid all of our bills on time, we could not eat. That hits a lot harder than data on what promotions worked best at Dollar General. And so we were able to tell that story and develop really meaningful solutions for what we were able to offer for Dollar General. Okay, I'm pretty much already almost at my time. I think very quickly, the last couple things I'll say is, we can't be yes men, yes women. We have to be able to have the courage to say no and push back when we are asked to do terrible research or really bad research or bad methodologies. And then I think the last thing I want to say is, the last adjustment is, focus less on what we do and more on what we can be. It's like, we do research, we do insights, we do projects, but what can we be? We can be revenue drivers, we can be culture changers, we can be strategists, and we can be the drivers of consumer centricity throughout an organization. But culture doesn't change if we just go with the flow, if we just say yes to everything, if we just go along with what people who say, yeah, I know enough about insights to be dangerous. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you are, is dangerous, because you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're asking. And for us as professionals to be able to say, no, that is not what we're going to do. We're going to do it this way, and here's why. Stand up for it. It won't work every time. That's okay. But the more we stand up and focus on what we can be and less focus on just what we do day to day, I think that is really going to help our profession. So as we get into the breakout rooms, the question that you guys are going to talk about is, what are other attitude adjustments that we need to make as an industry? You can dive more into one of the ones that I talked about. You can totally disagree with me, which is fine. But there are so many others, but I'd be very curious to hear from the group what you think some attitude adjustments are that are needed for our industry in order for us to evolve.